Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman.
The narrator, from this perspective, is held back by the expectation imposed on women during the time period. The rest cure was prescribed to women that were seen as exhibiting signs of hysteria or nervous conditions. After suffering from postpartum depression, her deteriorating mental state was ignored because women were viewed as emotional. And the narrator tries to write in attempt to slow her deterioration. This is also her attempt at regaining her autonomy from the man in her life, or her husband/doctor. The story also portrays John as the definition of control, as a contrast to the narrator, who shows having no control over her own life.
So I'm Maggie, and I have the post-colonialism lens. So the narrator feels captive, just like people who were colonized during post-colonial times. Most post-colonial writings have a theme of power between colonized and colonizer. We can see this dynamic between the narrator and her husband, because he suppresses her voice and tricks her into thinking that there was nothing wrong with her. An example being, you see, he does not believe I am sick. John's control over his wife is very similar to past colonization.
The short story, The Yellow Wallpaper, is a chilling story of the truth about insanity. Our main character has had mental problems for some time now and is in the midst of a breakdown. They have just moved to help her recover. However, in the bedroom of the house is a sickly colored yellow wallpaper. She criticizes the color, the pattern, and the way it looks in the room. Her husband does not allow her to do any of her old hobbies like writing or going outside. Over time, she slowly grows further into insanity and continues to obsess over the wallpaper. She is progressively more paranoid and even stops sleeping. She thinks that there is a woman stuck in the wallpaper and believes the woman is asking for her to escape. Her husband does not believe her and ignores any sort of cry for help that she is in. In the end, she finally loses her mind and rips the wallpaper into shreds. She thinks she has freed the woman, but she has really freed herself. She believes she'll find peace after destroying off the wallpaper and can move on as a person.
Cut it.
I have the psychological lens. The narrator is mentally repressed, not just physically confined, but her thoughts and emotions are dismissed. Her creativity is also suppressed, which worsens her condition instead of helping it. She begins to project her mental state onto the wallpaper, seeing the woman behind it as a reflection of herself. The woman behind it shakes. She is all the time trying to climb through the wall, The story shows a gradual dissociation from reality, breaking down caused by isolation and control. Her mental collapse is a form of psychological freedom, as it is a collapse, a rebellion, and madness becomes her escape. In the text it says, I've got out at last, and I pulled off most of the paper, so you can't put me back.
Hi, my name is Victoria, and I have the formalist lens. So it pretty much just talks about like the different forms in the text. So we start off with the form, which is the text is written in journal entries rather than having like chapters, which offers a first-person narrative, showcasing the unraveling of the mind throughout the text. Then we have the language. Gilman's diction is carefully chosen to reflect the narrator's descent into madness, and her tone is passive, showing how she suppressed her emotion and progressively gets more emotional and worse throughout the story. Then we have symbolism, which is that the wallpaper is a striking piece of symbolism, and it shows the chaotic patterns throughout the character's mental state. And it even says that the woman is trapped behind the walls, pretty much showing like the woman's own confidence in her own mind. And then there's imagery, the disturbing imagery such as the sickly, smooch, unliking, and sulfur yellow, eerie tone of the story, pretty much describing the walls contributing to the imagery within the text.
Hi, my name is Giselle, and I have the historical context. So women's rights were limited at this time, and you can see this when in the quote where it says, John laughs at me, of course, but one expects that in a marriage. And then another thing was the medical misunderstanding of mental health, and you can also see this when you see he does not believe I am sick. And then the story shows how women's mental health was often ignored or not taken seriously. And then you can see this from the quote above. And then it also says, it shows how men had control over women's bodies, minds, and choices during that time. John says, "If I don't pick up faster, he shall send me to where neutral in the fall, but I don't want to go there at all." It criticizes the medical treatment of the era, especially the rest cure created by Dr. Will Mitchell. And the story reflects how society expected women to be quiet, obedient, and stay within the home. The connection that all of our lenses share is that the main character, the narrator, felt powerless.
In post-colonialism writing, many people believe that being colonized felt trapped and had no voice, just like our main character who was silenced by her husband. The formalist perspective highlights the constant on the main character in her own home through language and imagery and symbolism. And then for our feminist lens, the control imposed on our main character by men shows the state of society as a whole and women's lack of control and authority. For our historical lens, the way men control the narrator, the yellow wallpaper shows how back then women had very little freedom and very little say on their lives. And lastly, with our psychological lens, the wallpaper gradually loses anatomy as our main character's mental state unravels under isolation and patriarchal control.